Good morning, my friends. This is Father Zerilli with our reflection on the Mass readings today, Thursday of the fifth week of Lent. I'll be speaking about our first reading today, taken from the book of Genesis, chapter 17. When Abram prostrated himself, God spoke to him. My covenant with you is this. You are to become the father of a host of nations. No longer shall you be called Abram. Your name shall be Abraham, for I am making you the father of a host of nations. I will render you exceedingly fertile. I will make nations of you. Kings shall stem from you. I will make my covenant with you and your descendants after you, throughout the ages as an everlasting pact, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land in which you are now staying, the whole land of Canaan as a permanent possession, and I will be their God. God also said to Abraham, on your part, you and your descendants after you must keep my covenant throughout the ages. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, my friends, as I mentioned yesterday, all this week we've been seeing examples of faith by various people throughout recorded biblical history. I mentioned the example of faith of Susanna from Monday. Then yesterday, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their great example of faith. We're being led this week by these examples to the great example of faith by Jesus himself on Passion Sunday, and spurred on to our own deep faith. It was Abraham's faith that we heard from Genesis today. It was Abraham's faith as well that led God to establish with him the great covenant, so beautifully read this morning here in the book of Genesis. In his letter to the Romans, St. Paul would make a startling claim, kind of related to this. He said that the heirs of Abraham, the heirs of the covenant, right, are not limited to those who share his bloodline, but really are those who share his faith. It was something Jesus would say himself. You remember the account when they said, your mother and your brothers are here, and Jesus said, no, my mother and my brothers are all those who keep the word of God and are faithful to it. In other words, being part of the family of God, being part of the covenant, being an heir to that promise is not about blood anymore. It's about faith, right? Just as God told Abraham at the end of our reading today that his heirs must remain faithful to that covenant. So it's that very sentiment and plea that is present in our opening prayer today on this Thursday of Lent. The opening prayer says, we draw near to the Lord and we ask him to look kindly on those who place their hope in his mercy. Get this, that cleansed from the stain of their sins, they may persevere in holy living and be made full heirs of your promise, right? I mean, being faithful, living a holy life is what makes us heirs to the covenant, what makes us heirs to God, right? We beg the Lord today for that gift of faith, which is such a powerful theme this week. A share in the faith of Abraham and the others that we've read about this week, that we might merit, through his grace, a share in his life. Amen.